Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us virtually tonight for a community meeting on the design for the new Woodlands Park spray pad. Even though we're meeting virtually, we are still on the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the City of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we recognize that we all have a role to play in protecting the air, protecting the land, protecting the water, and protecting the sacred medicines of this land. As settlers, we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land, to acknowledge the foundation of colonialism on which it is founded, and its ongoing impacts so that we can better take care and take action as residents, neighbors, and partners and caretakers today. It is my pleasure. I'm your, well, first of all, I'm Narinder Nan, your Ward 3 City Councillor. I'd love to take this opportunity to introduce and thank the city staff who've been involved in coordinating tonight's meeting. Leading us through the design options that will be presented are Victoria Cox, who's with Landscape Architectural Services here at the City of Hamilton, Wes Kindry, who's also with Landscape Architectural Services at the City, and Jana Joyce, who's joining us from the BTW group. And so thanks so much to the staff for doing all your background and coordination, helping spread the word in the community, and getting us to this event tonight. Before we begin, I did want to give a shout out to every single resident who's engaged in the process and to give you all and share a little bit of background of how this project came to be. It came forward directly as a result of over 250 residents who participated in the Barton Village BIA petition earlier this year. As you all know, I've been a champion of city parks and investing in play structures and play infrastructure for young people so that our ward is really robust in its ability to foster a great place for children in our neighborhoods. And city parks play such a pivotal and important role in ensuring livability and completeness and inclusivity in our cities. And amenities like in our parks that animate the space for public use make those parks that much richer. Woodlands Park has gone through many decades of changes, from having a beautiful fountain to being deemed the workers' park to its current iteration with washroom facilities, a soccer pitch, a basketball court, a live graffiti wall, and a refurbished play structure. Its parking lot and its adjacent transit stop and the existing facilities make it suitable for the addition of the spray pad amenity. And with climate change leading to more heat alerts and hotter temperatures, leaving more of our neighbors looking to parks as an opportunity to cool off, it was my honor and privilege as the Ward 3 City Councillor to respond to the petition of 250 residents and move it forward through Public Works and allocate Ward 3 discretionary funds to this project. So again, I just wanted to give credit where credit is due to the residents of Ward 3 and say thank you to all the neighbors who've engaged to date, from talking about it at the park while you're at the play structure, to signing the petition, to participating in the online survey at engagehamilton.ca, and to tonight's meeting. This process is exactly the type of community engagement my office endeavors to support in order to help inform city priorities. With that, I'd love to pass it over to Victoria to take us through the rest of the agenda. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Councillor. So my name is Victoria Cox. I'm a landscape architect and project manager for this project, and I wanted to give you a couple of quick Webex notes and tips. So you're all muted and your videos are off. But if you'd like to ask a question, we ask that you please add your question into the Q&A box. You can find that, sorry if I just slide one more, you can find the Q&A and submit your question, and we're gonna hold those until the end, and then we can address all of the questions at the end. So for the design presentation, we're gonna go through a little bit of background information. We're going to look at the site context, a summary of the online public survey feedback from our first survey that closed early November. Take a look at the design work to date, the timeline, and the next steps and how to get involved. So as we all know, there is an inherent value in public space, and investments are needed now more than ever. And for site context, so in looking at an aerial image of the site, we have Wentworth Street North, Barton Street East, and Sanford that all border the site. So you can see circled with the red circle within that area is where we're going to be putting the new spray pad sun shelter and associated works like seating and some additional planting. We picked this location as it's central in the park. It's along the existing path, has easy access to the building, and the sightlines are quite good from all sides. As far as survey feedback, so we had about 75 members of the public respond to our first survey, which we issued in advance of this meeting. As I mentioned, it closed, I believe it was November 9th. So that was quite a good number of people responding, and we got a lot of great feedback. So to start, we asked our first question, how much time everyone would typically spend at the spray pad. It looked like majority of people would spend about 30 to 60 minutes, and then about 10 to 20. Not many people spent more than 2 hours. So yep, that was question one. For question two, we just asked some general questions about age groups that would use the spray pad together. So looks like the majority of users would be 0 to 5 years old. And then after that, it would be 30 to 40 years old. And then it'd be 5 to 10 years old. And then in the 10 to 15 year range. And we even had 2 80-plus-year-olds who would be using this. Oh, sorry about that. For question three, so we asked about specific themes that would be considered and for everyone to select their top 3 themes. In first place, we had the woodland, forest, and creatures theme. In second place, Indigenous heritage. And in third, flower garden and bugs. Then going over to question 4, we asked about play features and elements that the public would like to see in the new spray pad. So, and I think we had check all that applies. So we picked the top 5, or sorry, the top 5 are highlighted here. So it was interactive features, user activated or user controlled. Then we had circular spray rings, and then in-ground jets and dump buckets were popular, and aqua domes were also popular. So other amenities that could be seen within the spray pad, so different kinds of seating, people liked that. Shaded areas were well liked. A water bottle refill station, tree planting and landscaping, and then bike parking as well. And you can kind of see the split there between dislike, indifferent, and like. And then as far as color palette incorporated into this design, a vibrant mix of colors was the top choice, followed by cool tones like blues, greens, and purples. I'll now turn it over to Jenna with MBTW Group to go through the design work.
Thanks, Victoria. If you could change the slide.
Sure.
Great. So the slide that's up on the screen right now shows the approximate location of the proposed spray pad, and it's generally in the same location as a previous playground structure, for those who may remember where that was. And this is just north of the existing park building. The site chosen, as Victoria has noted, has great visibility and is very close to the existing park building, which is where the spray pad servicing will connect. So that's a really important thing for us to consider as the designers. Also, too, we just wanted to point out scale-wise that the spray pad will be comparable in size to the existing basketball court, which you can see on this image, just to the left of the approximate project area. Next slide, please. The spray pad is proposed to sit within an area defined by 4 existing trees, which are to be retained and integrated into the design. And these images here, if you can see the dashed orange bubble, That's generally where the splash pad will fit into the park context. Next slide, please.
Oops.
Yeah, there we go. Can you just back that up one? Oh, sorry. No, I'm sorry. You're right. My apologies.
Okay.
You're on the right slide. Yeah. So the scope of the project includes a new spray pad, also a shelter, walkway and drainage improvements, seeding and tree planting. And also what we learned through the earlier round of community feedback, that features for children with special needs would be greatly appreciated. So the team has considered this, and we're proposing an idea that we're going to share with you tonight about how we can cater to the needs of this group. We'll point this out in the presentation, and we would definitely like to have your feedback on that. There are a couple of characteristics that we would like to point out about the site that will affect how the design develops. And this slide in front of you is just a kind of a quick diagram that shows you what some of the key things are that we're considering. First off, we note that there's a very short distance between the spray pad and areas where kids can become out of sight behind the building. This is of particular concern as Barton Street is close by and it's quite busy. So as the design develops, we need to have regard for this possibility and position junior focus features appropriately. The selected area also has very few shade trees, as shade is an important aspect of the spray pad experience. Our objective here will be to retain the existing trees and incorporate them into the design while adding new shade trees. There's also some drainage issues and walkway conditions that should be addressed as part of the scope. And you can see on this diagram sort of the blue bubbles indicate where there are some drainage concerns. It'll also be good to consider how to define the edges of the new feature and how it transitions to other park areas. So the green squiggly line are sort of that outside edge of the spray pad area that we want to think about how do we blend that into the adjacent park areas. Next slide, please. So in the spirit of the land acknowledgement that the councillor presented earlier in this presentation, and in anticipation of support for the heritage theme, the Indigenous heritage theme, apologies, the city staff and the design team consulted with Nawasa Kendaswan TAG, which is a local nonprofit community group that provides high quality programs and services to the Indigenous population in Hamilton, Brantford, and surrounding areas. These discussions were fantastic. They were thought-provoking and led to a recommendation to actually combine the three top themes together in an expression of nature and all its creatures. The team is going to continue to work with Nawasa Kendaswan TAG throughout January 2022 to further develop a single design option rather than multiple design options. Next slide, please. That said, your feedback on the topics included in this presentation will be very helpful to the design team to move forward towards a preliminary design option. So this community feedback combined with guidance from Nawasa Kendaswan TAG and the expertise of city staff and the design team will produce a mindful and appropriate design solution for the new spray pad. It is anticipated that the developed design for the project will be presented back to the community in February of 2022. So, fun stuff. Okay. We've provided some imagery on what a nature themed spray pad might look like, just to kind of help you visualize what's coming. Please note that these images are for illustrative purposes and only, and do not necessarily reflect the final design. So we're still working towards the detailing and the final design, but we really felt it was important to give the community an idea of what this is going to look like. Next slide, please. The spray pad features selected will support the theme and will include things like tree shapes, plant shapes, animal shapes, bugs, and where possible, boulders and stones that can be incorporated into the spray pad feature. Next slide, please. And although not shown in this rendering, the ground plane of the spray pad can also contribute to the nature theme and include treatments that will enhance the design. So this may include color variations, patterning, and possibly imprints in the pavement surface. Please note that the surfacing is required to be concrete, which is durable and has high solar reflectance, which means it will not be as hot in the sunlight as other pavements. Next slide, please. The next part of the presentation will describe the approach to the new spray pad design. So the City of Hamilton, as well as best practices in spray pad design, requires that there are at least 2 zones in the design, one for junior play and one for senior play. These can also be described as low intensity areas and high intensity areas, recognizing that children using the facility will have very different tolerances for the level of activity and excitement. It's good to separate the 2 zones so that caregivers can properly monitor water play activities. And so for those of you who do have children who participate in water play facilities in other areas of the city, you're going to know exactly what that means. And that is something that we're definitely going to be looking at through the design of this spray pad. In this particular case, however, the city would also like to include a middle area that has moderately intense features that could appeal to a larger spectrum of spray pad users. And the following slides explain what may be contained in each of the zones. So this slide in front of you here is representing the junior play or the low intensity zone. And this would contain features that have gentle sprays that are predictable, and they're scaled to the little wee bodies. So the images with the orange stars were noted in the earlier project survey as being specifically preferred features. So the low bubbler, the geyser, the aquadome, but a smaller version for little ones. And we've included other scaled and themed appropriate features for your consideration. So the follow-up survey will ask you what your preferences are for these presented features for the junior play low intensity areas. The next slide, please. So this slide represents the recommended components for the middle play or the mixed intensity areas or moderate intensity. And the middle play area is proposed to contain moderately exciting components that have some element of user control, predictability, and variety of volume of flow. You'll also see that the scale is larger and that overhead spilling of water is introduced. However, it would be gentle rain-like flow or misting. Ground sprays would be programmed to be user-controlled, surprise-controlled, or involve cooperative play features. So you can tell the difference between the low-intensity zone and this mixed-intensity zone. Next slide, please. The senior play or the high-intensity zone is where larger volume features are proposed, such as dump buckets and spray rings. User-controlled features like water cannons, water weaver, and ground sprays generate excitement and sure to soak fun. As you can imagine, this area will be the most intense in terms of water volume, unpredictability, action, and noise. That's why it's good to separate this area from the lower intensity areas. And again, the orange stars represent the top survey selections. The scope of the project also includes the provision of a shade structure. We're presenting some options here for the shade structure that include a single rectangular shelter, a leaf-shaped shelter or a nature-shaped shelter, multiple smaller shelters or multiple micro shelters, which are essentially metal picnic tables with umbrellas. There's different ways to provide the shade for this particular park, so please do tell us what you think about the options and which ones you might prefer. As noted earlier in the presentation, the team has considered how to provide park features suitable for kids with special needs. We are proposing a mini dry play area that should be close to the wet play area features for the spray pad and the shelter, while not being in the middle of action. This slide shows options for sensory elements such as musical instruments, boulders, logs, communication or sensory boards, and kinetic seating. And again, we're cognizant of the fact that kids with special needs may not necessarily want to be in the middle of action. So having a small space that's close by, that's a little bit quieter and has sort of different elements that they could focus on might be something that the community would like to see. The follow-up survey will ask you what your preferences are for these presented features. Okay, So now that we've looked at the zones and what might be in them, we'd like to get your feedback on how you would prefer the zones to be spatially arranged on the site. We're going to show you 3 options, each one with a different approach to locating the spray zones, the shelter area, and the mini dry play area. In all options, the existing trees are retained, and landscape berms and new tree planting are used to help define the limits of the spray pad area. Space is also provided between the spray pad and the walkway to deal with the drainage issues that we noted earlier. So this is option 1. And what you'll see here is the shade canopy is the white rectangle that's at the top of the spray pad feature. And right adjacent to it, below it, is the junior water play area, which is the yellow bubble. And then immediately to the right of it is the mini dry play area, which is a dark blue bubble. And the idea is that the facilities for little kids, little wee ones, are all sort of clustered around the shade area, and they're all very close by and quite visible. Moving away from that cluster of junior play features is the middle water play area. And again, that's the orange bubble. And that's kind of the slightly more exciting, little bit more predictable, less predictable and larger scaled elements. And that would be the transition that would then go into the senior water play area, which is at the very south end or the bottom end of the spray pad closest to the building. And you'll see here that the junior water play and the senior water play are separated by the middle water play area. Also, what you'll see on this diagram is some gray sort of banding areas around the edges, and that's indicative of some seating. So whether that seating ends up being benches or perhaps it's a seat wall or a combination thereof, the idea is that there would be seating available for caregivers, which is something that was identified in the survey. Also, you'll see around the edges, then transitioning into the other park areas, we're proposing additional tree canopy planting, as well as some landscape berms. So soil that needs to be excavated in order to build the feature, we can actually reuse that on site to create some undulating grading around the spray pad with some nice sodded areas. That will be kind of a nice additional feature for the kids to enjoy, but also provides a little bit of transition between the spray pad and the other park areas. So next up is option 2. And so what you see here then is that the shade canopy is moving towards the middle of the spray pad limits. And then on the north side, or the top above it, in the yellow bubble, is the junior water play area. And then the mini dry play area is just off to the right. So again, the facilities for the little ones are clustered together around the shade canopy. And then we've got the middle water play area is directly to the left or to the west of the shade canopy. And the senior water play still at the south end closest to the building, and that's that sort of lighter blue bubble. And so in this option, again, you see the gray banding around the edges where proposed seating could be located. And we also have the new shade trees and the berming. And one thing I just wanted to point out about option 1 and option 2, just for you to think about, is that the junior water play and the mini dry play areas are the farthest away from the building. And that is somewhat intentional because, as mentioned earlier, we're a little bit concerned that if a little one goes on the run, they could very quickly get behind the existing building and could be not visible. So we've strategically tried to come up with an option where the facilities for the little kids was the farthest away from the building, so that if they do take off, chances of somebody seeing them and being able to retrieve them would be a little bit better. So that's part of the reason why we've done that. Now, strategically or normally, best practices would be that the junior play facilities would be closest to a washroom. Because as those of us who know, when the little ones have to go, they gotta go, and it's best if they're closest to the washroom. But in this particular case, we're taking a slightly different approach, and we just felt we needed to explain why. And perhaps there may be a question at some point about the washroom facilities themselves, which I think maybe perhaps Victoria and Wes, we can jump in with a comment there. But why don't I finish off with option 3, and then maybe we could talk a little bit about the washroom building. So option 3, what you see in front of you here. So the shade canopy then is at the very bottom of the splash pad, or at the very south edge, closest to the building, with the junior water play area immediately above it to the north. So this option, we're moving that junior water play and the mini dry play area a little closer to the building, but the shade canopy is kind of the, I don't want to call it a barrier, but it gives space to perhaps see that little one right when they're about to take off, so that they can be nabbed before they become not visible behind the building. So in this particular case, we have the senior water play area to almost to the opposite of what we've shown you in option 1 and option 2. It's at the very north end. And then the middle water play area is kind of bridging the two. So in this case, the junior water play and the senior water play are somewhat in contact. But I think, there's a way that we could probably massage this so there's a little bit more of a middle water play transition between the two, so that we can maintain that separation between low intensity and high intensity uses. And again, the mini dry play area is tucked in and clustered with the junior water play and the shade canopy as well. And similar to the other two options, we're showing the landscape berming and the shade trees around the edges, transitioning to the other park areas. So that is the sort of the end of my part of the presentation, where we're sort of describing the design approach. So is now maybe a good time to talk about the washroom building and what's going on with that, or would you prefer to just leave it as a question?
I think we can just touch on that now, and then if there are follow-up questions, we can answer them. As far as I know, the washroom will be open at this park, summer and winter. There's actually a winter pilot project I was just informed about, and Woodlands Park's included in that. So washrooms will be open even in the wintertime from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then they'll also be open in the summer, as far as I know. And Wes, I'm not sure if you have any additional information to add to that.
Nope, that's good, Victoria. That they are being open for the winter times, and they are open in the summertime. Ordinarily, our hours, I believe, are till 9 o'clock at nighttime. But other than that, the washrooms are available year round for us now.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, Jenna, I'm going to just go on to the next slide and talk about a little bit about the timeline and how to get involved. And thank you for that presentation. So as far as timeline, so in fall 2021, we did some studies and investigations, including archaeology and geotechnical. We also started our community engagement. So survey number 1 was completed. So now we're in the fall and winter 2022 stage. So we're going to be doing some follow-up engagement. We'll have a survey released after this presentation. We'll also post this presentation for anyone to access. You can listen to it and you'll have the PDF slides available. And then we'll be hosting a second PIC in the new year. We're looking at February, and we don't have a date right now, but we will let everyone know as soon as we have that date. We'll also be finalizing the concept and the final design, and then doing our detailed design work, at least starting to do our detailed design work in the winter. And then in spring 2022, we'll have finished up our detailed design and be working on our construction drawings and document preparation. And then anticipated construction is in summer 2022. So as far as staying involved and making sure that we are able to answer all of your questions that you might have, there's today's meeting. You're always available to email me, go through our Engage Hamilton platform to tell us what you think. We have the survey number 2, which will be released, as I said, after this presentation, and that's going to be open until January 7th. So that gives quite a large window for feedback. And then, as I said, our second public meeting will be in February 2022 likely, and we'll follow up with a date on that. To stay informed, the best website is through our Engage Hamilton link. It has all of the updates. You can register for PIC and complete the surveys through Engage Hamilton. And then lastly, who's listening? So there's me, Victoria Cox, landscape architect and project manager through the city's landscape architectural services. You can always email me directly. And then again, you can go through our Engage Hamilton platform. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to our presenters, to the councillor and her team, to Jana and to Wes for providing support. And thanks to the public for attending. Councillor, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything before we move to the question and answer period.
I'd love to. I just wanted to say thank you also to yourself, Wes, and to Jana. That was an incredible presentation. You can really get a sense of the caring that you all put into the listening that you did as a result of the feedback that came in from the community. And I have to say, like, I was super excited throughout the entire presentation, and I can't wait to show the video back to my kiddo when she's not getting ready for bedtime. I think she's going to be thrilled, and I think many community children are going to be thrilled at the prospect of what's possible and what's coming into a neighborhood that that is full of little ones. So thank you again to everyone, also all the residents for participating tonight. Special shout out to the kiddos. I know there was a few kids that got to participate in the Engage survey. Some family members had mentioned that they had their young ones kind of click along in the earlier survey. A reminder that this is a great opportunity to include your kids in the democratic process. So when we get to that second stage of PIC and also the second survey, do include your young folks in helping make those selections and help inform the design for this great new community infrastructure. Thanks.
Thank you very much.